Yo, what is up everyone? It's ePower here. Albedo just came out and I'm going to be showcasing him in this video. I have a couple builds I want to try on him, so keep watching this video to find out whether or not he is a character worthy of spending your hard-earned primogems on. Alright, come on. Okay. Okay, please just give me Albedo. That's like all I want. Just give me like a Caesar Albedo. And please don't give me like a weapon or any other 5-star. Like please. Come on, game. Come on, miHoYo. You know I support you guys, so please be nice to me just once. Alright, guys. Is this gonna be Albedo? Oh, yes! Let's go. Alright guys, so as you just saw, we pulled Albedo. Let's start off by doing a quick glance at an overview of the character, and then let's go ahead and look into his talents and skills. So, starting with this normal attack, it's pretty self-explanatory. There's really nothing special going on here. Let's skip ahead and let's look into something more interesting, and that is going to be his elemental skill. Albedo's elemental skill, aka his E ability, is called Abiogenesis Solar Isotoma. So first of all guys, this skill is very similar to the other Geo characters' creations. For Ningguang, that's her wall. For Zhongli, that's his pillar. And for Traveler, well, of course, his boulders. Now, what Albedo does instead is that he essentially creates a geoflower on the ground. By holding the skill key down, Albedo can choose where to place this on the field. When the Solar Isotoma first appears, it's going to erupt, dealing AoE geo damage. Now, that alone isn't going to make the skill stand out. It's actually the effects that come afterwards. So the flower is going to have a field around it, and when enemies within the field take damage, the Solar Isotoma is going to generate something called a Transient Blossom, which is going to deal more AoE geo damage. And this damage from the Transient Blossoms is actually going to scale off of defense. These blossoms can be generated every 2 seconds with the entire duration of the Solar Isotoma at 30 seconds with a small cooldown of 8 seconds. The last effect is if you stand in the center of the flower, it's going to create a little elevator up, which can be very helpful in open exploration, and for combat if you have like a Catalyst or Archer character. I'm looking at Klee and potentially Gang Yu in the upcoming banner. Moving on to his elemental burst, Tectonic Tides. When Albedo casts his elemental burst, geocrystals are going to surge and burst out in front of him, dealing AoE geo damage. But there's another catch to this as well. If there's already a geoflower created by him on the field, something called Fatal Blossoms are going to be created as well. And these are going to explode, dealing more AoE geo damage. However, any of the damage caused by his elemental burst isn't going to trigger the Transient Blossoms, which are, again, the extra proc damage from his elemental skill. The next thing we're going to be taking a look at here are his passive talents. His first passive talent is Calcite Might. This allows his Transient Blossoms to deal 25% more damage to enemies whose HP is below 50%. The next thing here is going to be his second passive talent. That's going to grant 125 elemental mastery whenever he uses his elemental burst. This is insane, guys. 125 elemental mastery is no joke. Not only is this going to increase your damage from elemental reactions with their main DPS characters, but this is also going to create stronger and beefier shields from those crystallized shards. His last passive talent is similar to Mona's. When you craft weapon ascension materials, you will have a 10% chance to receive double the products. So guys, this is pretty damn good just because it can save you a lot of resin and give you a chance for more resources. So after looking at all of his skills, I had already begun wondering if Albedo is meant to be played as more of like an off-field DPS character. Now, an off-field DPS would be similar to like Fischl, where you would use their elemental skill and then switch out for your main DPS characters. Along with that, you would switch back to Albedo for his elemental burst whenever it is available. This seems to make a lot of sense because you could use a main DPS character like the Luke, and then you would gain the benefits and damage from Albedo's elemental skill. More specifically, the activations from the Transient Blossoms without actually needing Albedo to be on the field himself. Along with that too, because he grants his party members more elemental mastery from his ultimate, everything about his kit just tells me that this is how he's meant to be played. Of course, take this with a grain of salt, guys, because at the end of the day, you can build your characters however you want. If you want to have fun and put him on like a main physical DPS build or whatever, then sure, go right ahead. But ultimately, this playstyle of an off-field DPS role is going to make the most sense to me. Moving on, let's take a look at his artifacts. So I have two different builds that I'm going to be showcasing. The first is going to be a build more focused on providing his team more elemental damage through the utilization of Archaic Petra set with a defense percentage on the Sands artifact spot. The defense percentage here is mainly used to maximize the damage that comes from his transient blossoms, and I'll show you guys here what that build looks like. So the first build here, the substats I'm going to focus on is going to be crit rates, crit damage, attack percentage, defense, and then energy recharge. Flower and feather artifact spots are going to be very basic, but then for Sands, I have defense percentage, geo damage for goblet, and then for crit damage, I have the circlet spot. I think with this build, he can really maximize the damage that comes from his elemental skill, along with his elemental burst. The geo damage for goblet would be ideal because most of Albedo's damage is geo. And remember guys, for this build, I'm not using him as like a main DPS, so that essentially means I'm not going to be using his normal attacks too much, so it would really make the most sense if I have geo damage on that goblet spot. The second build I have is a build that's going to give Albedo more damage through his elemental burst as well as through his normal attacks. As many of you guys have already guessed, this is going to be like a 2-piece Archaic Petra and a 2-piece Noblesso Bleach set. I have the same goblet and circlet artifact as the last build, but this time I'm switching in attack percentage over defense percentage for the sand spot. This build is going to give Albedo more overall damage from casting his elemental skill as well as his elemental burst. But the downside here is that I can no longer buff my main DPS characters through that 4-piece Archaic Petra bonus. Moving on to weapons, there's two weapons that I think are going to be great on him. The first weapon is going to be Skyward Sword. This is an awesome weapon just because of the energy recharge. So with more energy recharge, Albedo can use his elemental burst more often, ultimately giving his team more damage by buffing their elemental mastery. Another weapon I think that can be really good for Albedo is going to be the Black Sword just because of that extra base crit rate. This is going to allow his party members to also deal more damage through Albedo's elemental skill. Although with this patch guys, we're going to be getting a weapon called the Festering Desire. Now this is going to be from the offense, and I think this might actually end up being the best weapon for Albedo in terms of like an off-field DPS support build. This weapon directly gives more crit rates and damage to Albedo's elemental skill. Now that I've gone over his skills and builds, I have tested Albedo in various content. I did a live stream earlier today where I did showcase him against world bosses, and I gotta say, his performance was just terrible. His Geoflower wouldn't work properly against Storm Terror, and then the Wolf Boss would just one-shot the Geoflower from all of his AoE attacks. And then Child, well, let's just say that he was teleporting all over the place, and then he was also randomly killing the Geoflower with his AoE. Just watch some of these following clips. I was pretty surprised at the fact that they're gonna buff Geo like overall, including that like double Geo bonus or double Geo character bonus, because that's a pretty big buff. Okay, no procs from his elemental skill. I guess it doesn't even work on the Storm Terror's neck. That's kind of lame. Huh. Great. The flower's just sitting up there. Wait, what happened to my flower? Did that already break? Okay. He just freaking pounced on the flower and then it broke. Oh, I guess most AoEs are just gonna brick it. Yep. For the rest of today's video, I'm going to be showing some Albedo gameplay, mainly from the Spiral Abyss. Now, Spiral Abyss is where he really shines, and this is where he really dominates. I'm also going to talk about a few more things such as team compositions, and lastly, my overall thoughts about the character. The first clip is going to feature like a burst team using Ningguang and Bennett to boost ALBEDO'S elemental burst just to maximize that damage, and then the following clips are going to be from Spiral Abyss with ALBEDO focus on playing that support DPS role. I have built him on the 4-piece Archaic Petra here while using the black sword. Okay, yeah, so I'm just going to talk about team comps with ALBEDO now. Like, this burst team clip that you're watching, this isn't really an ideal comp for ALBEDO. This was more of like a gimmicky team just to see how much burst damage he can potentially do. There are other characters in this game that can do much higher elemental burst than he can. Geo characters do lose out on a big advantage because of their elements. They aren't able to utilize elemental reactions such as Melt or Vaporize, where those two can really give a significant boost to your damage. So in terms of team compositions with a support DPS ALBEDO, you pretty much want to run like any main DPS character with him. Those characters can be Chongyun, Fischl, Diluc, Klee, Child, Razor, and the list just goes on and on. More importantly, you want a main DPS character that can benefit from Archaic Petra, so that they will get a damage buff whenever they pick up a crystallized shard that is the same element as their own. Now that you have two characters on your roster, ideally the third character you want is a character that can cause an elemental reaction with your main DPS. And lastly, you would want a character that can either provide sustain to your team through shields or heals. I'm looking at characters like Barbara, Bennett, Jean, and Diona, and of course there are many more. Guys, if you have any questions about team building, feel free, leave a comment in the section below and I'll do my best to get back to you. I'm sure a lot of you guys are curious about my final thoughts, and well, I think he's a phenomenal character even at C0, and here's why. The first reason that I think he's crazy good is because of how much damage he can put out by not actually having to be on the field. Along with that, he can provide so much damage to the rest of your team members through utilizing the artifact set Archaic Petra and his passive talent, where he will give his team so much elemental mastery. Outside of world bosses, ALBEDO is pretty much insane in every other content in this game. He will make Spiral Abyss extremely easy, especially floor 12, just because of all the crystallized shards he creates. Along with that, he does provide so much damage output. Another big reason is because of the potential buffs that are coming in 1.3. Guys, they are going to be buffing the heck out of double Geo characters, Elemental Resonance, and I'm pretty sure if those patch notes go live, double Geo teams are going to end up being the meta. And lastly, the 4-star characters that are on his banner now, these are some of the best 4-star characters you can get in this game. So either way, I definitely suggest you guys to summon for some of these 4-star characters because they are just so good. Bennett and Sucrose, I would recommend getting them to at least C1 because this benefits them so much. And hey, if you guys are lucky, who knows, maybe you'll end up getting ALBEDO once or even twice. And guys, constellations for 5-star characters make them freaking insane. I'm sure you guys already know this. Like, ALBEDO with constellations is on a whole different level. His C2, C4, and C6 just changes him up completely, and his damage output goes out the roof. But remember guys, even at C0, ALBEDO is definitely a character worth going for, and that's what I believe. One downside to ALBEDO, however, and that is the fact that he requires resources to be good. In fact, he requires a lot of investment for him to shine. His talents need to be leveled up, and he also needs to have good artifacts to perform well. But either way, that brings me to the end of my video here today. The last clip is going to be a full 12-1 Spiral Abyss clear with ALBEDO in the support DPS role, and I'm just going to let that play out. If you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and I would appreciate any comments that I can get. You guys have shown me so much support over the last month, and I truly appreciate it. If you aren't subscribed already, please consider subscribing, as I will continue to do my best to put out quality Genshin Impact content. Until then, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.